Hello out there, we're on the air, it's hockey night tonight.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Lighting Lamp Podcast, episode 14. I am here with Steve.
Hello.
As always. And today's episode's going to be just a lot of news. We really didn't have a topic going on for this one specifically in mind, so we're just going to talk NHL news because surprisingly there's been a lot going on in the NHL. So we're going to start off with a follow-up to the Jim Montgomery news that we heard a while ago. Today he was checked into a rehab facility for alcoholism, and he was quoted as saying, "Firing me was the right call." Do you have any sort of general thoughts on this situation?
I think it just goes back to what we said originally, right? It was like, this was the rumor that we had heard, and we talked about it a little bit. We didn't want to speculate, but now that we know it's true that he had an alcohol abuse problem, I think firing him might have just been the wake-up call he needed, the push to be listen, this really is a problem, it's getting in the way of your professional duty. And I mean, you could see when Dallas fired him, there's no malicious intent involved. It wasn't he was a bad coach, we don't like him as a person. It was more just I think it was more just we need to give Jim the push in the right direction he needs. So I think that's really important, and I think it's the right thing. He should be able to get the help that he needs, and I think it's important that he gets the help that he needs, and I don't see why he can't do this and then come back and be a good NHL hockey coach. Just because he has demons doesn't mean he can't be a good coach.
Well, I think it's important for a lot of reasons, but primarily, yeah, like you said, we kind of speculated on this because if you listen to the Jim Nill presser that he did, again, he didn't sound angry. He didn't sound like this was for any sort of hockey reason. Like I said, he kept calling him Monty instead of, Jim or Mr. Montgomery. So you could tell that he probably felt bad for the guy. But ultimately, yeah, you can't place your professional life in front of personal health, especially mental health, dealing with something like addiction with alcoholism. That's a seriously dangerous issue. So I think it's good that they fired him because, if he was still the head coach, then the headline's not Jim Montgomery goes into rehab. It's Dallas Stars head coach goes into rehab, and everyone's like, when is he coming back? What's the timeline? And there's that pressure to get him back in.
There's also the pressure from him, he'd feel a level of pressure because they'd feel like he'd need to get back and be contributing. You don't want him to be, not to sound mean, but and not to say alcoholics are, but you don't want it to be dead weight, or you don't want it to be a millstone around your team's neck. So I think this is right, and I really wouldn't be surprised if Dallas rehires him after this, because they said they're not hiring a coach to replace him. Rick Bowness is the coach for the rest of the season, and I wouldn't be surprised if Montgomery gets the help he needs, and you see him slowly start to get back, integrated back into the Dallas Stars rotation, because the players all really liked him. There was no hockey reason for it. Obviously we know there's no hockey reason, but there was even if it was a hockey firing, there's conceivably no ill reason for him to fire him. Hit the team, struggled a little bit out of the gate, but it's a good team, and the team was performing well, and he showed he can get the most out of them. I mean, they went 7 games in overtime with the Stanley Cup champions last year, and they almost knocked off the Stanley Cup champion. So arguably they could have been the Stanley Cup champion. They were good enough to do it, So I don't. That's just pure speculation on my part, but I don't see him having trouble finding a job anywhere in the NHL, even if it's somewhere like the Devils when to give him a shot, or he ends up back in Dallas, or anywhere. This is a guy that's gonna have a long career in the NHL. He's proven that he's a good coach and he knows what he's doing. So I think getting the help here now, especially early in his coaching career, I mean, it's only his second season. He only went a season and a third, is important, because if he waited longer, he'd be perceived as damaged goods, and that's a really awful way to look at it. And I really don't want to perpetuate that stereotype of people with addiction as being damaged goods, but that's going to be in the back of people's heads. Whereas here is now he gets the help now, and then say he gets hired by a team and has a couple seasons, no issues, then it's more likely that he'll continue to get jobs and he'll continue to be. It won't be Jim Montgomery recovering alcoholic. It'll be Jim Montgomery, head coach of blank coach. NHL team, and a damn good one at that.
Yeah, and listen, as much as we might hate to admit it, hockey and every single hockey team in the National Hockey League is a business. And if I showed up to my job I'm not saying or Montgomery did this, but if I show up to my job impaired in any sort of way, or that some sort of addiction in my personal life was impairing my ability to do my job, there would be consequences. But what I like about this is it wasn't Dallas Stars like feeding him to the wolves. They didn't come out and say he's an alcoholic, he was ruining this, he did this, that, and the other thing. They very quietly just said, look, there's something going on that we can't talk to you about. So, yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying with the you don't want to perpetuate that dead weight or damaged goods stereotype, but I mean, it's still a business, so the Dallas Stars did what they had to do, but they did it in a very respectable way. They could have easily just been like, we fired Jim because he's battling addiction and he did this specific incident that caused us to fire him, and then there's that.
I think it's really impressive in general just how like close to the chest Dallas was able to play this for so long, because he got fired. There was that one rumor that we saw about the alcoholism, and then like we didn't hear anything about it until he checked into rehab and released a statement himself, which I think is really impressive. Just like, I think it also shows a commitment on the part of the organization to the person.
Well, that's what I was going to say. What does that tell you about how highly everyone thinks about him?
Right, like Mike Babcock, people couldn't wait to throw Mike Babcock under the bus. They all the horror stories came out. I mean, then you had Mark Crawford. Guys couldn't wait to throw these guys to the wolves, And not to sound like but for good reason. Like, a lot of the stories are horrible, but like with Jim or Montgomery, Coach Montgomery, it made a lot of like. It reflected really well on him as a person, because nobody wanted to throw him to the wolves. The players, like, they all came out and said, we really support Monty, we really like him. I mean, Jamie Benn, the captain of the team, was the first to issue a statement and say, we don't know what happened, but we're not going to talk about it. It's none of our business, but we still really like Monty. We really respect him here in this room. Which is really what leads me to believe, like, he is going to come back to Dallas. Like, I think it would make a lot of sense. Like, they liked him, he's a good fit. But whatever, that's neither here nor there. That's not what that's not the point of the conversation. But like, it's just like nobody was willing to talk, and I think, like you said, that reflects really highly on how the organization felt about him, both as a person and as a coach. Because if they, like I said, like Mike Babcock, the organizations looked highly on him as a coach because he could win games. Ken Holland put up with him for so many years in Detroit, but. Like, he might have hated him. He might have been like, wow, he's a miserable, like, I don't want to see him off
like
the rink.
Grumpy old man that nobody wants to talk
to.
to.
So, like, when, you don't feel bad for a guy like that when the stories come out and he gets thrown to the wolves like that. Like, that's not something you're like, wow, I feel bad. You're like, wow, he's kind of a jerk. Like, I understand. Whereas with Montgomery, if they throw him to the wolves, you'd feel bad because you're like, wow, he's got a problem, and like there's no
and,
reason.
Like, you're just destroying this man for no reason.
Yeah, there's no reason to throw him out in front of the bus like that. Not even under the bus, in front of the bus, like.
Yeah, so we wish Jim Montgomery all the best. I agree with you. I fully expect to see him back in the NHL. Obviously, I hope he doesn't rush it. I hope he takes the time, even if it takes 2 or 3 years for him to be able to handle the stress and the daily grind of the NHL,
right.
82-game season, being away from family and all that, where he doesn't have to turn to this vice. Take your time, do what you got to do, and look, even if he doesn't get back to the NHL, even if that is Jim Montgomery's legacy, a season and a half, the fact that he had the wherewithal to check himself into rehab and say, look, these guys did the right thing, shows me that he's probably going to have a successful life outside of rehab, even if it's not in the National Hockey League.
He seems like, it shows a level of responsibility, right? He said, like, I had a problem. They were completely right to fire me, and I'm getting the help I need. So it shows, like, an adult level of responsibility where he can take on and be like, I'm sorry. Like, this is a problem, and not even just in the hockey world. For him to, like, look his family in the face and say, I'm sorry, this was a problem. I need to get help. It takes a lot. Like, that's to admit you have a problem, especially, like, alcoholism or, like, any sort of addiction like that, really takes a lot. So I really have a lot of respect for Jim Montgomery. Like you said, even if he doesn't make it back to the NHL for some whatever reason, maybe it doesn't work for him. The stress is too much. It's too much of a trigger to make him want to do something, which I'm not saying it is, but like that is a possibility. The legacy that he can leave is of a respectable, good coach who had a problem and did the right thing by getting help for it. And there's respect involved in that.
Exactly. So I know I speak for both of us when I say that we hope that his rehab is successful and that he comes out of it a changed and healthier individual. I hope to see you back in the NHL and the hockey world, but if I don't,
if for whatever reason Jim Montgomery hears this, we wish you all the best, Monty, and we'd love to see you behind an NHL bench again soon. You did a great job with Dallas.
So there's that sort of story. Not exactly a happy follow-up, but a positive step, I would say.
I mean, I'd consider it a happy follow. Not like a happy follow, but it is a positive. Like, it's not like Jim Montgomery dies in ditch, you know?
Right,
It's like Jim Montgomery gets the help he needs. So
Right.
it is a positive follow-up, and I think we'll be talking about this again at the end of this, maybe not at the end of the season or beginning of next season, where the actual conclusion will be Jim Montgomery, good guy, gets help, gets his job back.
Yeah, exactly. So just kind of, I guess, spin off of that, still in the Dallas Stars area, Corey Perry.
Oh my God.
Less than 5 minutes into...
2 minutes and 40 seconds into the Winter Classic.
Elbows Ryan Ellis in the head. Ellis doesn't return. Corey Perry, that's 5 in a game, bud, for elbowing. Take a hike. Out of the game. Comes down today, suspended 5 games for elbowing Ryan Ellis. I have a lot of opinions on this. I know you do as well. Let's just jump into it. General thoughts on the hit, the suspension. Is it enough?
So
what happened here?
So the hit was stupid. There was no reason. So Ryan Ellis is trying to walk the blue line, right? Trying to make a play. All Perry really has to do is shove him there, and he'll knock him off balance because he's leaning towards the puck. He missed the hit, right? Fine. Just fly by him, dude. Just stop and turn around. There's no reason to come by and chicken wing the guy like that. This isn't 1981 or like 1975 when you could get away with stuff like that. Like you know, it's not the old NHL. Like, that's the Gordie Howe special or the Mark Messier Classic. Like the chicken wing right in the corner. But it's just a stupid, boneheaded play from a guy who knows better. He's been in the league a long time. He's like a 12-year veteran or something stupid. He knows better than that. And that's the part that really annoys me. And the other thing is, it's the Winter Classic, bud. Like, I understand it's a regular season game. There are 2 points on the line for your team. But it's still a spectacle. It's like, it's essentially a show game, right? Like, you go out there and play, and you want to play hard, and I don't, like, if you go out there and you hit a guy hard and he gets hurt, I have no issue with it because you're playing hockey. But, like, there's no reason to throw an elbow or, like, make a vicious, stupid play in a game where everybody's just trying to have fun. Like, everybody just wants to celebrate hockey outdoors, and you took the storyline from, you know, Dallas rallies to beat Nashville from a 2-goal hole to Corey Perry elbows Ryan Ellis in the head, injures one of their best defensemen, and gets himself thrown out of the game.
Well, that's the other thing is he put his team in a 2-0 hole because
they got the
Predators get the 5-minute power play. A little bit later, Dallas gets delay game, puck over glass. Matt Duchene scores on a 5-on-3, and then Nashville once again follows up on a power play. So Nashville had 2 power play goals. Dallas was down 2-0. So he hurt his team in the long run. But let me ask you this, because this is not the first time Corey Perry has been suspended.
No.
Do you see this as a malicious hit, or do you think this is the typical Corey Perry hit where you look at it and you say, he wasn't malicious, but he's an idiot?
I don't think it's malicious, because I think it was just a spur-of-the-moment thing, right? Like, he realized he missed the hit and just threw his arm up to try and make contact any way he could. So it just so happened to be coming across and hit him right in the chin. I mean, you have to know better than that. That's my biggest thing, right? Like, I don't. It's vicious, and it is malicious in a way because he did it. I don't know if he did it with intent to injure, which would make it malicious, but it's just a stupid, dumb play that has no part. And Corey Perry's done this his whole career. He's done things where you just look at him and you're like, why? Like, are you stupid? Like, I don't understand.
Well, that's why I asked, because I feel like a lot of the times with Corey Perry, it's never, oh, he's a like, we don't look at Corey Perry the same way we looked at a guy like Chris Simon.
Or like Raffi Torres.
Or Raffi Torres, where we look at it and like, this dude is out to kill somebody.
Yeah.
It's a lot of plays where you look at it and you're like, that was so unnecessary, or just a boneheaded, like, total lapse of judgment. And I get it. The game is fast. It's a very fast-paced game. But I feel like he does this a lot where you look at these plays, like these hits, and you're just like, it was just unnecessary.
There's no, like, this isn't like the hit in the World Juniors, right? This isn't like in Canada versus, is it the Czechs? I don't remember. But Canada, whatever. One of the Foot brothers comes down the boards and hits a guy, and he gets thrown out of the game for it. And, like, looking at it, I still don't understand the hit, because he came out upright, arms tucked, and just the guy bailed out of the hit and got hurt. And that was his own fault. That play you look at and you're like, ugh. That's just a hockey play. It's tough. There was really nothing wrong there. This you look at and you're like, this wasn't even a hockey play. He didn't make a play at the puck. He didn't make a play at the man. He just threw his arm out. Like, like, it's just a complete lapse in just awareness of where you are on the ice and where you are in relation to the player. Had he been, like, shoulder to shoulder and threw his arm up, okay, he just threw him off. Like, he's trying to throw him down. But just, like, I don't understand what through his head when, like, you miss the hit. And instead of just stopping and trying to turn, you just throw your arm up and, like, chicken wing the guy? Like, I really don't understand the thought process there. And that's really what annoyed me about it. And that's why I think the 5 games is fair, because it's just stupid.
Well, I was going to ask, do you think the suspension is too much, too little, or do you think it's in the right place?
I mean, I was guessing around 3, just because it's Corey Perry. But, I mean, 5 is... I'm not complaining about 5. I don't think it's too harsh. I don't think it's too light. I think it's enough to send a message. Like, 5 games is a long time. Like, I don't know how long that actually is, because I don't know how long it's going to take them to serve 5 games for Dallas, because I don't know what their schedule looks like. But it's just, like, you got to send a message of, like, listen, you've been in the league too long to be able to be doing dumb things like this. Like it's just been a total lapse in judgment. He's, like, done it his whole career, and he's always been a hothead. Like, he's always been an agitator or somebody who's looking to get under your skin. We saw it with Patrick Waugh and the water bottle and, like, all that. But, like, this just isn't even that. This is just and just throwing your arm up and killing the guy. Like,
well, this also ultimately long-term really hurts the Predators, because Ryan Ellis is on injured reserve right now. They're calling it an upper body injury. I think it's fairly safe to say it's probably a concussion.
I mean, he couldn't even stand up. He got hit and was laying on the ice. Like, he had to be helped off the ice and down the runway.
So, yeah, I mean, honestly, I think any other player... Not any other player. I think if it was a guy with no history of doing something like this, he probably would have gotten 2 or 3. They probably would have looked at it and been like, oh, this is the kind of hit we're trying to get out of the game. But like you said, it was a flyby. He was just desperately trying to make contact at anything. It's a boneheaded play. Listen, sit 3, just don't do it again. But because it's Corey Perry and he kind of has a history of doing this, like, questionable, maybe not malicious, but just stupid play where they're like, listen, like, we can only give you a pass so many times, that I think 5 is fair. It's unfortunate that a premier defenseman for the Predators is hurt, a Predators team that really can't afford an injury like that right now.
I just think there's some irony in it all, right? It being Ryan Ellis. Because earlier in the month, Ryan Ellis had been involved in an incident in New York where he elbowed, I think it was Buchnevich coming down the boards. He chicken winged him and caught him and didn't get anything for it. And I'm not saying it's justice. I'm just saying it's really ironic that then, like, roughly 2 or 3 weeks later, he gets a chicken wing right up, like, right outside. It was literally right at center ice too. Like, it was like there was no missing this thing.
No. There was no hiding it in the corner or anything like that.
I also think the best part of it was that he had to walk, because it's not a hockey rink, he couldn't just go down the tunnel. He had to walk all the way down the runway, all the way to the football dressing rooms. And there was a lot of Dallas fans, but there was a pretty sizable amount of Predators fans in the attendance, and they gave it to him. They let him have it. And he deserved every obscenity, every little drop of beer he got thrown at him, every, like, piece of popcorn that got thrown at him. He deserved every inch of it, because you're just an idiot. Nobody wants to get hurt in a regular season game. Nobody wants to get hurt, period. But nobody wants to get hurt at the Winter Classic.
Yeah, well, because everyone's like, oh, Corey Perry got thrown out of the game. It's like, yeah, Ryan Ellis missed the Winter Classic too.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, that's the part we forget about. It's like Ryan Ellis missed the Winter Classic because he was probably sitting in a room with a headache that he couldn't get rid of, and he probably couldn't remember where he was. Whereas Corey Perry just sitting in the dressing room like, well, I guess I get to watch the game on TV now.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was an interesting play. I think it was stupid. But that's kind of that. As well, in the concussion news, an injury front, we're going to talk about some very key injuries coming to some big names at the time. Brendan Gallagher goes down with a concussion after getting unintentionally kneed in the face by Ben Sherratt.
His own teammate, yeah.
Brendan Gallagher was in the process of being hit by another player. He was already down, and then Ben Sherratt comes, and I guess Ben Sherratt was also trying to throw a hit, just knees Gallagher in the head. Again, for a Montreal Canadiens team that really cannot afford an injury to Brendan Gallagher right now.
You know what's funny? Do you remember when Gallagher got a similar concussion a couple of years ago when it was PK Subban that accidentally kicked him in the head? He was trying to jump over him and the knee caught him right in the back of the head. So it's like he's been on the receiving end of this way more than I think anybody else could probably attest to. But it's tough. I mean, it's tough, especially because he's like the only goal scorer. Like, not the goal scorer, but he's one of the only guys putting up points right now for a team that like we thought is having trouble scoring goals.
Well, their remedy to that, they signed Ilya Kovalchuk to 1 year, $700,000. Kovalchuk sits 36 years old. In 17 games played with the Kings, so after he got his contract cut, he had 3 goals, 6 assists for 9 points. I don't know. What do you think about A, the injury to Gallagher, and then B, their answer being signing Ilya Kovalchuk? They also made a trade, which we'll talk about later, but right now just the Kovalchuk for Brendan Gallagher sort of stopgap.
So the Gallagher injury is tough because that's a big hole to fill. He's a top 6 winger, probably on their top line, playing all the important minutes, power play, penalty kill, last minute of the game. He's the guy that's out there. And he also you lose an X factor that he brings because he is just a pest. Nobody, let's not beat around the bush. Nobody likes Brendan Gallagher, right? When he's on your team, you love him. But when you're playing against him, he's just annoying. You're like, oh my God, he's always in someone's face. He's always in front of the net. He plays with an edge. And there's nothing wrong with that. There needs to be guys like that on every team. And he just brings it for the Canadians. And he also happens to be a 30-goal scorer, usually. So that's tough. That's really tough. And the Kovalchuk thing, I really don't understand because this is a Canadians team that's in the process of taking their young talent and trying to get to the next level with it and trying to they're kind of in a weird mishmash position right now because they have a lot of younger players and a lot of older guys, but I just don't think adding a 36-year-old Ilya Kovalchuk to your roster is really going to bolster your goal scoring at all because that's what LA was thinking, right? They're like, oh, we got a 35-year-old Ilya Kovalchuk coming off the best years of his career in the KHL, bada bing, bada boom, and he went out there and did nothing. He got his contract terminated. It literally could not have been a harder turnaround. It's literally like a scene of a movie. He gets on a plane to Russia, and the next thing you know, he's sitting on at a bus stop in LA because he doesn't have a job anymore. And there's a reason. He can't. This isn't 2012 Ilya Kovalchuk or 2009 Ilya Kovalchuk, who's putting up 50 goals and 110 points and is just absolutely breaking the game. This is a guy who can't skate that well anymore. His release is still lethal, but he's not finding the open space on the ice anymore. And what is Montreal going to use him for? A power play specialist? You're going to pay him? The $700,000 is nothing, and conceivably there's a 2-way part of the contract. They can send him to the
Yeah,
Laval.
it's a 2-way deal.
So if they wanted to, they could bury him in Laval in the AHL. But I don't understand. So what, you just want him to post up and shoot on the power play?
Montreal also recalled Dale Weiss.
He got into a fight promptly, literally in his first game, second shift is in a fight already.
They recalled Dale Weiss from the AHL, also kind of in response to this whole thing. My deal with Kovalchuk is this: I don't like the guy. I'm gonna be honest with you. He's one of a few players that I have a big problem with. I don't like the New Jersey Devils. I'm gonna put that out there. If you're surprised by that, I don't know why you would be.
Yeah, we've kind of bagged on them a lot.
Granted, we're also an Islander and a Ranger fan, so we have to deal with them a lot.
Yeah.
But the point is, for me to dislike the Devils as strong as I do, I absolutely hated what he did to them. Okay, this guy signs this massive contract a year in, waits until
screws them because he
waits till all the good free agents are gone.
Well, not even that. He signs that contract and screwed them originally because they circumvented the cap with that contract.
Oh yeah, so they also got dinged for that.
So they lost those draft picks, 2 first-round draft picks in a row, and then he leaves.
Waits till all the good free agents are on a team, and then retires, goes to Russia, and then walks back in the NHL like he's still the hottest thing on the planet, goes to LA and does absolutely nothing of value, is struggling on the ice, doesn't decide, hey, maybe I can't score as much, maybe I should up my defense, or maybe I should get better at my board play and be a good forechecker. No, just decides he doesn't want to play anymore, talks to the general manager, they terminate his contract because he violated team rules. This is a guy that very clearly is arrogant. He's got a massive ego, and Ilya Kovalchuk does whatever Ilya Kovalchuk wants. He's always been this way. Even when he was in his prime on the Devils, he always had an attitude. He always thinks he's the best guy on the ice at any given time. And look, I don't like him. I really don't like him. But even putting my feelings for Ilya Kovalchuk aside, from a hockey perspective, he doesn't bring it. He doesn't score goals, and this is a team that desperately needs, they need help on both ends of the ice, but this is a team that needs a goal scorer, and I'm sorry, but he doesn't bring it anymore. And not only that, he's not the same kind of player that Brendan Gallagher is, because Brendan Gallagher, like you said, He's a pest. He's annoying. But more importantly, Brendan Gallagher goes to the front of the net. He gets those screens. He gets those tips, those deflections, those rebounds, those garbage, greasy goals. And on a team like Montreal, which, let's be honest here, up front, at least, are kind of talent poor. And that's not to be mean to guys like Thomas Tatar or even a guy like, what's his face? Max Domi. But they're not on the same level as guys like Tarasenko or guys like McDavid or Draisaitl who can, dangle through three players and score a goal. It's a team that scores a lot of greasy goals. And listen, you're talking to an Islander fan here, so there's nothing wrong with greasy garbage hockey. But Kovalchuk doesn't fit that scheme. He's a perimeter guy. He likes to hang around the circles looking for the shot. I don't see this working out personality-wise because, look, if you have a strong personality...
Montreal doesn't like you.
We saw Subban get crucified in Montreal for years for being different than the hockey norm. So you think if a guy like Ilya Kovalchuk's going to walk in, demand first-line power play time, they're going to take too kindly to that? I don't think so. And I just don't see what little talent he has left as being a scheme fit for this Montreal Canadiens team.
It'd be different if it was a team that wasn't talent poor and just needed a guy to play like a third line wing and score like 10 to 15 goals. You'd be like, all right, well,
if you're adding him to a team that's a shooting, kind of high flying, like if you sign him with like the Maple Leafs or the Lightning, you're like, all right, I can see it. He's a perimeter shooter. They like their snipers down there, but they don't really have a guy like that in Montreal. And there's nothing, and that's not to say that they couldn't use a guy like that. Absolutely, Montreal would love a guy like an Austin Matthews type player who can just grip it and rip it, but that's not what Ilya Kovalchuk does anymore.
And like, if this was like 10 years ago and we'd be talking about this when Kovalchuk first left, you'd be like, oh wow, this is a great signing. I think that would have really solved a lot of the issues that Montreal team in the early 2010s had, outside of just not being competitive on some nights for some reason. But this is just like one of those things where you're just like, why? Like, what did Marc Bergevin see? Like that whole situation in LA was bad. Like you said, even off the ice, he was just one day like, you know what? I don't want to play anymore. And they were like Rob Blake? It's just like, okay, like I guess, like you're in breach of your contract then.
Do you think that part of this signing is driven by the fact that Montreal sits right now at 18, 17, and 6. They're 6 points out of the division, 7 points out of the wild card. Do you think this is Marc Bergevin saying, I can't afford to wait until the trade deadline to trade for a goal scorer because my team's going to be way too far out at that point?
Yeah, I think this is like them trying to keep it afloat. This is really the Montreal trying to keep their team afloat by being able to win games however they can. And like they just can't afford to wait till February. Like they just can't. Like if you slide any further than 7 points, you're kind of done.
Especially with teams like Tampa Bay
coming on hard, yeah,
heating up. They're back in a divisional spot.
Even Toronto's been hot recently. Like
Toronto's back in their divisional spot where they should be. Florida Panthers are starting to put it together.
The Atlantic Division's not as good as the Metro, but it's not a bad division by any stretch. There are 4 or 5 good teams in there. It's just that the Metro teams are just better.
It's just that the Metro conceivably has 7 good teams.
Yeah, well the thing with the Metro, the issue is like they have 7 teams that can all for some reason put together stretches where they can play playoff caliber hockey, and then you have 2 legitimate Stanley Cup contenders in the Washington Capitals and, I mean, honestly, the New York Islanders. You have 2 legitimate Stanley Cup contenders there. Like one's one's an outside shot in the Islanders, and the other one is like a real
probably
true
a favorite
blue,
right now.
Yeah, a real true blue Stanley Cup contender. In the Atlantic, you don't really have that. You have
Boston.
You have Boston as a true blue Stanley Cup contending favorite. You have teams with outside shots like the Toronto Maple Leafs if they put it together, Tampa Bay if they put it together. But it's like you also then have teams like Ottawa, and it's like okay,
and Detroit,
like you have 2 of the worst teams in hockey,
and Buffalo who can't seem to figure it out.
Yeah, well Buffalo gets hot and cold, and Jack Eichel is trying. He scores 4 goals in a game to win the game. Like he's really trying. I respect the hell out of Jack Eichel, honestly, for that. But the thing is, like, Montreal can't afford to slide, because even if they fall behind, now, like, if they fall behind Buffalo, now it's like, now you have to try and catch a team that's not even in the playoffs anymore. Like, you don't have to worry about getting points just on, like, you don't have to worry about yourself. Now you're worrying about everybody else, and you never want to be playing catch-up, especially in March.
Especially when teams like the Lightning, the Leafs, and the Bruins conceivably aren't getting any worse anytime soon. I mean, I know the Bruins have had a really, really rough stretch lately. Every team goes through that. I mean, we saw it with Vancouver. Vancouver went through that. Now they've won 4 or 5 in a row or something like that. But yeah, if Tampa Bay was still mediocre, you probably have a good shot to keep pace. But if Tampa Bay is heating up the way they are, I don't know.
It might be all but over. And then to try and catch the wild card is even a big gamble because now
you're fighting in the Metropolitan.
And you're like you said, they're 6 points out of a divisional spot, right? That's their best shot just to get into the division because they're 7 points behind a wild card, and all of those Metro teams are only getting better right now. They're only playing better hockey.
Yeah, I mean, you're chasing Carolina and Philadelphia, but it's not like, let's not pretend that Columbus didn't just put together a streak of, 8 or 9 in a row?
Yeah, well, that's what I was just going to say. Like, Columbus, they're behind the Columbus Blue Jackets. They're chasing the New York Rangers. Like, they're chasing teams like that who really shouldn't be in a playoff spot.
Well, it's interesting that we're talking about the Canadiens and the Sabres kind of in the same bucket because these two teams made a trade. So I really see all three of these trades as kind of interconnected. And I do want to get back to the injury thing, but let's talk about these trades because we're on this roll anyway.
Yeah.
So Buffalo trades Marco Scandella to the Montreal Canadiens for 2024, which originally belongs to San Jose, which at this point in the 4th round is probably going to be a top 5 pick in the 4th round.
Right.
Buffalo then flips that 4th to the Calgary Flames for Michael Frolik, who it's worth noting that Frolik had to waive his no-trade clause to go to Buffalo. And Montreal also makes a trade with Ottawa. They trade Andrew Sturtz, who's I think he's like some 26-year-old in the AHL, not really a big piece. And a 2021 5th, and Ottawa gets Mike Riley. So it's interesting because Montreal, look, we've known that Montreal's been looking for a left defenseman to play with Shea Weber pretty much this whole year. And they've had Ben Sherratt playing 23, 24 minutes a year. Is Ben Sherratt a 24-minute defenseman?
Ben Sherratt is really like a nice number 3, number 4 defenseman playing like 18 or 19 minutes a night.
Give him like 18 minutes and top line penalty kill.
Yeah.
But you're not matching Ben Sherratt against a McDavid or any of the other centers or wingers that they're going to see. Like, you're not matching Ben Sherratt with David Pasternak or Mitch Marner or Jonathan Huberdeau.
It's just not a good idea.
But I really don't see Marco Scandella as being that way either.
Marco Scandella is like a number 5 defenseman. He's a good bottom pairing defenseman. So I don't understand what this trade really does. I mean, it makes sense for Buffalo because Buffalo is flexing the fact that they have a bunch of expendable defensemen that they can get rid of, guys that they really don't need on the team, that aren't really in the long-term plans that they can trade for. Like, they essentially traded Marco Scandella for Mike Frolik,
right?
Which is good because they could use the help up front. Like, Michael Frolik's a good top 9 forward, can contribute on the penalty kill, decent on the power, like a number 2 power play unit, good in the number 3 hole. Like, it's a good pick. Like, it's a good pickup for them. And I think, well, Frolik obviously thinks he's going to fit in because he waived his no-trade clause.
Yeah, and the defense with Buffalo, even without Marco Scandella, is Bogosian, Dahlin if he's healthy, Yoki Haru, McCabe, Miller, Montour, and Ristolainen. So you have 6 or 7 guys there. None of them are necessarily elite yet. I think Ristolainen and Yoki Haru could be elite, and Dahlin certainly could be elite. I don't know that they're there yet, but yeah, so you flex Marco Scandella, and the interesting thing for me is the Flames here, because they get rid of kind of an albatross in that contract that Frolik had. They're paying him $4.3 million. It's only 1 year left, but 4.3 for Frolik at this point in his career is kind of a lot. I would say he's probably more of a $1.5 to $2 million third line penalty killer type guy.
Yeah.
Now, I'm interested because this leaves Calgary with $2 million in cap space. I'm really interested to see do you think that this is them gearing up to make another trade?
I wouldn't be surprised if they make a move of some kind. Because, I mean, they've been heating up recently, and they look like they're getting ready to make a push for the playoffs. And there are going to be a lot of rentals in the market, so I wouldn't be surprised if they make a move and this cap space opened it up. Or I don't know if they have any expiring contracts or anything they have to deal with this offseason, so I don't know if that'd be a consideration for it. So, I don't know. It's just an interesting trade. I just think it's always good to have cap space. And being able to weaponize your cap space like a way a lot of these teams have recently is important. So I do think they're probably going to make a trade. I think Calgary needs something. I'm not really sure what, but they definitely need something if they're going to try and win the Pacific Division.
Yeah. So currently Calgary sits there 21-17-5. So technically below NHL 500. They have 22 losses. They have 47 points. They're 1 point out of the division. They're tied for the wild card with Edmonton, I believe, but Edmonton holds a tiebreaker. And this is a team that a lot of people had really high aspirations for. I mean, I picked them to be first in the Pacific. I can't recall offhand, but I might have picked them to win the West.
I think I did the same thing.
So this is a team that a lot of people were really high on, and they've seemed to really struggle. They're not getting the same production out of guys like Johnny Gaudreau or Sean Monahan that they think they should be. I mean, Matthew Tkachuk certainly has been fantastic for them. Yeah. David Riddick and Talbot have kind of just been okay. I think a large part of their struggle comes from the fact that Giordano's not the same player he was last year. I mean, that was... I don't want to say it was the death rattle for his career, but that might have been the best year we're ever going to see out of him ever again. But I think the core is still there to be competitive. So to me, this looks like, why would you trade Michael Frolik? Well, A, he has that cap space. You need that cap. And B, this looks like, to me, they're going to be on the market. They're looking for a piece or two to add to this team. And I think getting rid of that $4 million contract where they don't have to retain anything, that's good for them. I'm not quite sure where Buffalo's going. Because Buffalo right now sits 18-17-7, 5 points out of the division, 6 points out of the wild card. And we both talked at length about how desperately this team needs to be competitive. And to me, neither one of these trades really solves anything. Sure, you get rid of Scandella, you get rid of his contract, makes sense. But then why would you pick up a $4 million Michael Frolik if your intention is really to try to make a move at the deadline to push this team over the edge and get into that playoff spot?
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, who knows? This could be the piece that they were looking for, right? Just the missing piece that they needed. But also, it could come back to be to bite them right in the butt. That $4 million could really hamstring them from being able to trade for a guy that they really need, that they could use, like a Chris Kreider or something like that at the deadline, whose contract now they can't afford.
Do you think that they're gonna flip Frolik or try to flip him away from the team, and then this was really just an elaborate way to get Scandella off the roster?
I don't think so, just mostly because he'd have to waive a no-trade clause again, and that just makes it so much more work than they think they're willing to put in.
Yeah, it's weird, because to me the biggest issue I have with the current iteration of the Sabres roster is there's no depth goal scoring. They have guys that they're paying way too much money for that don't really bring it. I hate to say this because I loved him when he was on the team, but Okposo's not doing anything for them, and he's still got a big contract. I mean, he's never been the same since his concussions. Zemgus Girgensons didn't pan out. He's a solid fourth liner for them, but he didn't pan out the way they thought he was going to.
I mean, he was an all-star. Remember that?
Yeah. I mean, who really on this team would you say is potent offensively besides Jack Eichel and Sam Reinhart, and Victor Olofsson? Which, getting back to it, Victor Olofsson is now out 5 to 6 weeks with a lower body injury.
That was just a really awkward play. I don't know if you saw it, the way he fell.
Yeah.
It looked kind of like he got caught in a rut. I don't really know what happened, but it was awkward. And they can't afford to lose a guy because they're not getting any depth goal scoring. Casey Middlestad is severely underwhelmed. He's not doing anything for them. Like you said, Oposo's not doing anything. Reinhardt's been good.
Eichel's been Eichel, but Eichel can only do so much.
He can't win games on his own. I mean, you're even seeing that in Edmonton. They have the greatest player on earth, and they're out of the playoff. Well, they're in a playoff spot, but they're very on the verge of being
in
out.
a wild card spot.
After being first in their division for how many months? Your best player can only win you so many games.
Yeah, and to lose Victor Olofsson in the rookie season he's having, especially, that's going to kill their power play.
I mean, he started his career with 8 or 9 straight power play goals.
Yeah, and on a team that doesn't really have a lot of offensive depth, I think the defense is passable. I think you can get away with it.
The goaltending's been good they're getting.
I feel like with the level of defense that they're getting out of their forwards, you kind of need an upgrade in net because Hutton has been struggling this year. He started off pretty good. He's struggling down the stretch. I could see them trying to flip him, maybe incentivizing a team to take on him send him to Toronto. They need a backup goaltender desperately. Try to get one of their scoring forwards. I just think that the three main issues are the scoring depth, maybe not having the best defense, but it's passable, and then having just average goaltending is not good enough with the defense.
I mean, Carter Hutton isn't even the starter anymore. He lost the job to
Linus Ullmark.
And Linus Ullmark's looked good. He's looked really good.
Yeah, he has. He's been good this year. It's just, to me, the roster needs, like, a roster like this to be competitive needs that next level goaltending.
It needs Ryan Miller.
Yeah. But none of these trades really address it, and in a team that's trying to prove, and we saw it, like, let's be honest here. You're not signing Jeff Skinner to the money you gave him for one 40-goal season if you're not trying to keep Jack Eichel. I could see a team giving him easily $1.5 to $2 million less than the Sabres gave him, because they'd probably be like, look, you've only ever done this once. I mean, he's a good goal scorer, don't get me wrong. But I don't think you're paying him that much money if you're not trying to prove to Jack Eichel, hey, we're trying to win here. Or I don't think you signed Marcus Johansson to the term that you did if you're not saying, hey, we're trying to win here. But none of these trades really seem to me like they're trying to win.
It's a really weird spot. I mean, like, the weirdest thing was the Mike Riley for Andrew Sturts trade. Like, I didn't get that because I was just like, all right, well, Mike Riley's been okay for Montreal.
Do you think... I think it just comes down to them making room for Scandella. But, I mean, Mike Riley's a weird guy, too, because they were really high on Mike Riley for a long time.
Yeah, didn't he... No, that was Ryan Poehling, who had the hat trick in his first game. But, like, Mike Riley was good for them. They were like you said, they were really high on him. And now all of a sudden he's just expendable. So I don't know what Montreal's seeing on their blue line or who they're seeing that they think they can, just dump him. But it's interesting. I don't know. Ottawa wins out because, like, what happens if Mike Ryland's being a diamond in the rough, right? Like, they have nothing to lose on this one. And they traded an AHL player and a 5th-round pick for him. Like,
yeah, especially for a team that's been turning diamonds, that's been turning, rock into diamond lately, between J.G. Pajot, Anthony Duclair. I mean, Thomas Chabot we all knew was good, but...
Man, still playing 38 minutes a night.
Yeah, it's a good trade for the Senators. They really don't lose anything. They lose a career AHLer and a 5th-round pick for a guy who... Look, even if Mike Riley turns into a top 6 defenseman, you traded an AHLer and a 5th for a top 6 defenseman.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty good trade. Yeah, I don't know. I can't really make heads of these trades. I mean, I'm assuming that A, Mark Bergevin, B, who's the GM up in Calgary? His name just walked right out of my skull right as I was going to say it. I can see his face. Trevelling?
Brad Trevelling, yeah.
And the Sabres GM, who, again, his name just walked right out of my head. I'm assuming they all know something I don't, right? I'm assuming there's some plan here, but for the Sabres, this doesn't really seem to me like they're dedicating themselves to winning or keeping Jack Eichel around. Jack Eichel's still under contract, right? But if he asks for a trade, you kind of have to oblige him at this point, because given his personality, you can see that he would check out on the ice, and that's not a good look, because A, that hurts his trade value, so you're trying to get as much as you can for him.
I mean, you can see this year he's a lot more engaged than he's been. I mean, like, he's way more engaged on both sides of the puck.
He's in the corners. He's battling it out.
He wants it. And, like, Jack Eichel's not I don't think Jack Eichel's the kind of guy that, like, is going to change. But, like, if the team's not making any like, I think he just feels like if he can only try so hard for so long. Like, you're going to see it from Connor McDavid eventually, too. Like, you can only try so hard for so long on a team that's mediocre before you're like, listen, you're not doing anything to get better. I want to leave.
I gotta get out of here.
And, like, not to sound like that guy, but, like, that's kind of the John Tavares situation in a nutshell. Like, he played his heart out for the Islanders for a decade almost, and the team before they hired Lou Lamoriello and Barry Trotz just didn't do anything to get him the help he needed. So eventually he was just like, listen, like, you're not doing anything to be competitive, so I'm going to leave. Ironically enough, they ended up being super competitive, but...
Well, we also saw it with Ryan O'Reilly in Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, Brian O'Reilly said Buffalo was ruined his career. Like, he said Buffalo, he hated playing hockey in Buffalo, and I was like, wow, that's a lot. That's a big accusation, but...
It just goes to show you can't expect a guy on the caliber of a Ryan O'Reilly, a John Tavares, or a Jack Eichel to show up to the rink every day with no help, I mean, sure, you have guys like Victor Olofsson and Sam Reinhart, but it's nice to say we have these guys coming in name, but if it's not happening on the ice, it's not happening on the ice. I mean, you could say we have all these big name players as much as you want, but if you're sitting on a couch come April, Jack Eichel's not going to be happy about it. And
the only guy that you listed off that's giving him any help is Victor Olofsson, and he's gone for 6 weeks.
So I mean, to me, I think Buffalo has to make the playoffs convincingly sometime in the next 2 years, or we're probably going to see Jack Eichel asking for a trade off this team.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same thing about Edmonton, honestly, with McDavid. Like, they have to do something convincing to keep McDavid around. Otherwise, you're going to see, like, he's just not going to want to stay.
Well, you can't walk into the playoffs as the second wild card, get smashed in 4 games by the Blues, and then look at McDavid and say we made the playoffs.
You can't do it.
Because he's going to tell you where to stick that.
You can't do that. It's Jack Eichel do the same thing. You can't be like Jack Eichel. They can't slide into the second wild card, end up playing the Washington Capitals or the Boston Bruins, getting smashed in 4 games. And then you have them turn around and look at Jack Eichel and be like, "Well, we made the playoffs." It's like, yeah, but we lost every game 6-0 in 4 games. Like what was the point in that? We should have just missed it.
Right.
Because like you guys didn't give me. There's nothing here. I can only do so much.
Yeah, and you can see it. Like you said, Jack Eichel's been engaged this year on a level we haven't seen before, but it's still tough. I mean, if you miss the playoffs again, what are you gonna do? Speaking of teams in the playoffs that are dealing with guys being out, Pittsburgh Penguins just lost Jake Gensel for 4 to 6 months with shoulder surgery. The guy scored a goal, slams into the boards, and skates off immediately holding his shoulder. I knew right away that it was some sort of injury because he didn't even try to get up and celebrate. Like, he skated right off the ice. Word comes out, done for the season with shoulder surgery.
It's probably a separated shoulder. Like the way he hit the boards, probably a separated shoulder. But this is a Penguins team that can't afford to keep losing guys. I mean, Sidney Crosby's played, like 12 games or something all season?
Significant guys have missed time. Crosby's missed games. Malkin missed games. Letang missed games. Bukestad is still out. Now Gensel's out.
I mean, I'm pretty sure Matt Murray was out at one point with an injury. Like, it's...
Well, let me ask you this, because this seems to be a team that can get hurt as much as they want and still win. They're tied right now with the New York Islanders in the Metropolitan Division. But do you think that's sustainable now that you're losing a guy on the caliber of Jake Gensel?
Absolutely not. And who knows how much longer Sidney Crosby's out for, right? So that's like the big thing. If Crosby and Malkin are in your lineup, yeah, you still win some games. But like, just having Malkin, which, I mean, granted, Evgeny Malkin's Evgeny Malkin, right? Like, it's not like, oh no, we only have Evgeny Malkin, one of the best forwards in the league, but it's like, oh no.
Who's he playing with?
It's like, oh no, he's playing with Brian Rust and Simone. Oh god, great.
Well, let me ask you this. If you're the GM of the Pittsburgh Penguins, are you making a move at this point? Do you believe that this core is worth an investment of a guy that, because Gensel is going to be back next year, do you think it's worth investing in a player that might only be here for a year at this point with this core?
I don't think so. I don't think the team's I don't think they're a Stanley Cup contender, and I think the general manager I think Pittsburgh's in the middle of trying to get younger on the fly while still remaining somewhat competitive in Sidney Crosby's late years of his career. So I don't think it's a Stanley Cup team by any stretch. And so I think like making the playoffs or missing the playoffs really kind of comes down to whether or not where you want to draft at that point. Like, if they just get banged up and they're done, and it's like, all right, well, we can close shop, play some competitive games down the stretch, and if we make the playoffs, I think that's, like, the best way to look at it. Because, I mean, obviously they want to make the playoffs, right? Every team wants to go to the dance, but at some point you kind of have to look at it and be like, are we good enough to get past the first dance?
Well, let's also look at it in terms of who their matchups would be. So, in the Metropolitan right now, they'd be playing the Islanders, who
swept them,
are a big, tough team. I mean, the Islanders also had their own injury. We lost Adam Pelech, who's done for the year. Something with, I think it's ACL, but, you know, we still got guys like Mayfield, Pulak, Boychuk, Martin Cizikas, Clutterbuck that are going to, you know, Ross Johnston that will grind you down physically. If they slide to a wild card spot, they could be potentially playing the Washington Capitals, who have Ovechkin, Tom Wilson, They're not going to shy away from the physical body contact. Or you're going to play the Boston Bruins.
Whose whole identity is the big, bad Boston Bruins.
Right. So I don't even know if you make the playoffs if physically, with your team being as banged up as it is, say you get Crosby back, that's great. What if he just suffers another injury? Or Letang gets another lower body injury that's plagued him for years? I mean, you're not facing teams like the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Toronto Maple Leafs who you can kind of feel okay about skating with. You're facing Metropolitan Division teams or the Boston Bruins. Like, you're in for a hurt.
Yeah, I just think Pittsburgh's got to take a look at it this year and be like, all right, maybe this isn't our year. We'll get ready for next year. Maybe unload some contracts they want to get rid of, or I mean, I don't know. If they make a move at the deadline for something, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised considering that's like their MO. They always have. I mean, but I just don't think it's worth it because I just don't see them getting it. Even if they make the playoffs, they're not going to get out of the first round. Like, I just don't see them. They're kind of just be a doorstop for some team.
Here's an interesting question. What's going on with Matt Murray? Tristan Jarry's been playing extremely well lately.
Matt Murray is struggling, and struggling is not the word. I mean, Tristan Jarry's literally supplanted him as the number one. I mean, he had 2 shutouts in 3 nights. Like, he's been better than Murray.
Matt Murray's contract is up at the end of this year.
Ooh,
granted,
spicy.
Matt Murray's only 25, okay? Let's not panic and say, oh, he's this last year, good year of his career. He's got plenty of good years ahead of him. But Matt Murray's 25, and you know who else is up at the end of this year is Tristan Jarry. Could you see, conceivably, and Matt Murray's going to be making more than $3.75 million.
Yeah.
He's probably going to ask for someone in the neighborhood of 6 to 7. Do you think you could see Pittsburgh Penguins kind of doing what you said, closing up shop and being like, look, if we make it, we make it. If we don't, whatever, it's not the end of the world. Do you think that they could move Matt Murray at the trade deadline?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised by it, but I think it's tough to move goalies at the deadline just because, like, teams that need goaltending help generally aren't in the market at the deadline. They're generally selling. So it'd be tough. I'd probably be closer to the draft where teams kind of have an idea of who they are in the offseason. They have a chance to, like, look at things, and then they have a chance to make a move and then reevaluate once free agency starts. So I wouldn't be surprised if he moves near the draft or, I mean, that's pretty much it, or he leaves during free agency. But I don't think Pittsburgh's going to get rid of him because I think Pittsburgh still thinks they can be competitive, and I think they think Matt Murray is their best shot to do it. I mean, let's be honest. The guy's a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. You don't win 2 Stanley Cups on a fluke.
Yeah. Well, there is one specific team that I could think that needs goaltending help. Do you think that they could pull off something with the Edmonton Oilers?
I don't know. I think Edmonton more or less is looking for wingers. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Edmonton trade for like Chris Kreider or somebody else hitting the market like that because they need somebody to be able to, that isn't Zach Cassian to be playing with Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. But I don't know. I mean, at the draft, I could see Edmonton pulling the trigger on something because at that point they'll know who they are. Like they'll be like, okay, well these are the issues we've addressed during the season. They trade for that, then they have time to like look at the draft and be like, okay, now we can get ready for free agency. And we can really evaluate our roster then. And then after that, they'll be like, okay. But I think, I don't know. I don't see Pittsburgh letting Matt Murray go. But I wouldn't be surprised if a team took a flyer on a guy like Tristan Jarry, who's playing really well. I mean, worst case is you pay him a little bit of money and he's a backup, and he's been a good backup for them for the last couple of years. So worst case is you pay a little more for a good backup, and best case, you end up with a starting goaltender making backup money.
Yeah, I could easily see a team like Columbus trying to offer sheet Tristan Jarry for $2 or $3 million because
hell, Detroit would be great to make a move for something like that because Detroit needs a goaltender and then like,
or even Ottawa because I mean let's be honest here, given the trajectory of this team, if this team comes back and Pajot and Duclair are 30 goal scorers next year again, they could be pushing for a bubble wildcard spot.
Right.
I mean they're even mostly on the basis of the division not being that good because I hate to be this guy, but I think Montreal's trajectory is only downward from here. I don't think Buffalo's doing enough to convince me that they're going to be a playoff team even next year. They could be. I'm not going to say they are. I'm going to say that they would be long shot for the wild card, but not a guaranteed bottom feeding team like they were this year.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. Fixing the goaltending issues is, I mean, a big part of like what they need to figure out in Ottawa. So, I mean, taking a flyer on a guy like Tristan Jarry or somehow prying Matt Murray out of Pittsburgh would really bolster that Ottawa team. And yeah, they'd be a long shot, but they'd be more competitive in it than they were.
To me, they'd be in the same position as the Blue Jackets were this year. I wasn't going to count them out all the way, but I wasn't going to put them even in a bubble situation. But I mean, look what the Blue Jackets are doing now. They're making that push for that bubble wildcard spot.
Yeah, that was pretty much all entirely on the strength of Eunice Corpusalo recently, who's now also injured.
Well, okay. Let's talk about that just real quick. Do you think it was fair of the NHL to fine John Tortorella $20,000?
I see why they did, but like he wasn't wrong.
Right.
I mean, that's like the thing. Is like everybody knows Tortorella was right.
The man said exactly 0 lies in that rant of his.
Yeah. And he's been that way his whole career. I mean, he did it when he was with the Rangers that one time when he talked about Pittsburgh. He said the exact quote I think was, "They can cry all they want. They've been crying for years. Nothing's going to change now." And they find him for that too. So it's like, all right, whatever. But
he's right.
He's right. Like he's right.
And they also slapped something down that said if you do another act like this between now and December 29th, 2020, we're going to fine you $25,000. Which to me, all that means is next time Torts blows up, he's just going to go yard with it because he knows he's only going to get dinged $25,000. He's like, "Oh, look, they can't hit me for anything more than that." So like he's definitely going to go yard next time he explodes.
I just don't like I think the part that's frustrating the most is the fact that cost them their starting goaltender.
Right. Well, this is what annoys me is that this is basically like the NHL saying, "Bad Tortorella. We were wrong, but you're still wrong here." It's like, no, like you were 115% in the blame. It starts with the refs not putting time back on the clock. Actually, it starts even with the refs not even considering it because they could have called up Toronto and said, "Hey, did we miss the clock running?" And Toronto would have been like, "Yeah, literally a second and a tenth ran off for seemingly no reason."
They wouldn't even need to call Toronto. Like, there's a guy in the booth with a stopwatch at every single game that keeps the official time.
So it starts with them not even questioning it. It then goes on to Toronto for not paying attention and being like calling in before the faceoff and being like, "Hey guys, like I don't know if you noticed, but about 3 seconds after you blew the whistle, the clock ran for no reason." And then it ends with Eunice Corpusalo getting hurt on a hot Blue Jackets team. That pretty much effectively ends their season, I think.
I'd agree because he was really coming on.
And everything Torts said was 100% correct. Yeah. Sure, could he have put it a little bit nicely? Yeah, but it's John Tortorella, and
he's never said anything nicely.
Put yourself in his position. This is a man that is working for his job, okay? Because this is his job, is to win hockey games, right? So he's a man doing his job whose team just lost a desperately needed point, and they're starting goaltender because the clock ran for literally no reason. Tell me that you would walk up there and be like, sometimes it happens, that's the way hockey goes.
You go nuclear, because if the guy misses a call or blows a call, it's like, okay, there's a human error involved here, right? You understand that he can only see what he can see, and sometimes he's wrong. Like, all right, you blew a call, cost us a game. I'm pissed, but I'm not that pissed. But when the clock runs for literally no reason, I'm pissed, because it's like, how does that happen?
Because there's 3 backstops to that weren't put in place.
Yeah.
Like you said, if a guy misses a call on the ice, you don't really... Once you make the penalty call, you can't really rescind it. Although now with the 5-minute majors, they can review it. But if a guy calls a 2-minute minor, you can't really rescind it. So it's like, all right, there's no second or third layer here. But there's 3 layers to this. The ref not thinking... The ref not thinking to take a look. The ref telling Foligno, "I'm not taking a look." And then Toronto not doing their job. So there's 3 different backups here.
Even the guy in the booth not sat blowing the horn and calling the ref up and being like, "Hey, the clock's wrong," because that's his whole job. He's a timekeeper.
Right.
So did he not look at his stopwatch and look up at the clock and be like, "Wait a minute"? Because you see at the start of every game, they start the stopwatch and it runs between every whistle, whistle to whistle. That clock is running, so they keep an official time. And then there's the official time in Toronto, and then there's the time on the clock. The time on the clock is not the real time. It's like in most sports, someone else is holding the actual time. It's like in soccer, the guy with the actual guy who determines how long the game is the referee. He's got the stopwatch. And once 90 minutes have actually counted down on his stopwatch, that's when the game's over. So it's like, okay, in hockey, that guy is the timekeeper in the box. And he didn't even think to look. So it's like, what? How did this all go so wrong? And then to like add insult to injury, you lose a red-hot Eunice Corposalo who's looking like Sergei Bobrovsky's heir apparent, goes down with an injury and he's out, what, like 6 weeks or something?
Yeah, all because the Blue Jackets scored a goal in overtime with 0.3 of a second after the clock expired. So that goal would have counted.
Yeah.
They win the game, they don't lose Eunice Corposalo.
And that's the part that would really get under my skin.
I think the NHL blew it, and I think they blew it by finding Tortorella. I'm going to be honest with you. If I'm the NHL at this point, I'm looking back at this game being like, we blew it. We totally shanked this one, and we just screwed John Tortorella out of a win, out of his starting goaltender, and probably out of his playoff hopes this year. If I'm the NHL, I'm releasing a statement. I'm saying, this is the thing. This is what happened. We blew the call. We don't agree with the way Tortorella did it. We reprimanded him for his actions and his tone and his words, and leave it at that. Because you're wrong in this situation. 110% wrong.
You can't be like, well, he's more wrong. It's like, no, you're... It's like when we play hockey, right? Like, when you come through, like, at the rink and you elbow a guy, and the referee comes up and he's like, wow, like, that's ridiculous. Like, you can't be like, well, you missed a call earlier in the game. It's like, yeah, you're still wrong, though. You still blew this.
It's essentially almost like blaming a teacher for a test that you failed, that they gave you the answer sheet the night before.
Yeah.
It's like if the teacher gives you the answer sheet and says, this is the answer sheet for the test, and you're like, oh, I don't need this crap, and then you throw it out, fail the test, and then blame the teacher.
Yeah.
It's like, no. Like, you had backups to this failure, and
you had every opportunity to succeed here, and you didn't, whereas, like, he is just on the receiving end of getting screwed by everybody at the league. Like,
yeah, it's and I don't even think people are like, oh, it would set a bad precedent if the league came out and admitted they were wrong. The NFL did it last year. The NFL said we were 100% wrong on that blown pass interference call in the Saints game,
and they changed the rules.
Yeah, you have to admit when you're wrong, and in this instance, National Hockey League, you've done a lot of good things this year. You were wrong, and you owe Columbus, John Tortorella, and Eunice Corposalo all an apology for this.
Yeah, especially because you pretty much sunk their ship. Like, that's it. Like, their backup's okay, but
this is his first year in the NHL. It's just ugh.
But losing Corposalo hurts. Really hurts, especially when now that he's starting to find his game, and Jarmo Kekalainen's starting to look a little bit like a genius.
Yeah, so that's a tough situation in Columbus. Did you want to touch on the World Juniors, or did you want to kind of save that for?
We can talk about it. We can talk about it after it's over, when we actually have like a wrap of like the medal rounds and stuff.
All right, so we're gonna kind of, unless you have any last minute thoughts here.
No, not particularly.
All right, so we're going to kind of wrap this one up. Next week, we're going to do some halfway mark stuff. We're going to talk about standings, who's doing what, some trophy race updates and stuff like that.
Who's pretenders and contenders for the playoff spot? Not Stanley Cup, because at this point it's pretty much clear cut who the Stanley Cup favorites are, who the real contenders are.
And we can talk about Stanley Cup contenders once the playoff picture is more, solidified.
Yeah, because then we can talk about like their path to the Stanley Cup and how difficult that would be. So that'll be a fun one. That'll probably late in the season we'll do that. But
so halfway stuff next episode, and then the episode after that is probably going to be around the All-Star break.
So that might be when we do our prospect show. We talk about like
the upcoming draft and then teams prospect,
like top 3
pools.
prospects. Yeah, like rate them on a scale of like A to F probably.
So a lot of fun things coming up for the next 2 episodes. Be sure to stick around, and we will see you guys next time.
Bye.